The Super Mario Bros. Franchise is as successful today as it's ever been in its more than 30-year history. With best-selling games continuing to be released, theme parks being built worldwide, and a fully animated theatrical film that has grossed over $1 billion to date, Mario and Luigi are as recognizable as any fictional characters. While their bushy mustaches and cap overalls combo have remained largely the same since their inception, the first major attempt to develop the brothers from in-game sprites to fully realized personalities was in 1989's The Super Mario Bros. Super Show. The show was made up of two different segments: the cartoon portion, which starred animated versions of the heroic siblings joining forces with Princess Toadstool and her loyal confidant Toad to protect the Mushroom Kingdom from the evil King Koopa, and its bookending segment, a live-action sitcom that followed the brothers running their plumbing business from their Brooklyn apartment that proved instrumental in shaping aspects of the Mario Brothers that are still officially recognized by Nintendo today. The sitcom followed the pair's misadventures through outlandish situations with even wackier celebrity guests, and ended up being the #1 cartoon in its time slot. So why, after only a few short months, did Nintendo decide to cancel this instant hit? And why do they continue to ignore such an integral part of Mario Bros. History? And perhaps the biggest question, did the real-life adventures of gaming's favorite twosome flourish because of the stories they told? Or was it simply a byproduct of riding on the coattails of the biggest face in video games? Let's jump back to a time when Mario was played by a professional wrestler, and meeting the leader of the Soviet Union or palling around with the Ghostbusters was just another ordinary day in the Mario universe. It's time to look back at the Super Mario Bros. Sitcom. The 1980s were the beginning of the Super Mario Bros. Empire. With over 40 million units sold between Super Mario Bros. And Super Mario Bros. 2, and the legacy-defining Super Mario Bros. 3's release on the horizon, a cartoon seemed like the perfect way to continue promoting the games and bring in new fans. But according to Andy Hayward, executive producer for the animation production company Deke Entertainment, Nintendo had no interest in making a TV show for their most prized IP, citing their fortunate problem of already being unable to meet the growing demand for their games. But an impressive pitch would sway their decision, leading them to agreeing to the show. And soon after, the main stars were hired. Mario would be played by WWF wrestler Lou Albano, and Luigi would be played by long-standing character actor Danny Wells, most famous for his role as Charlie the Bartender in TV's The Jeffersons. The Super Mario Bros. Super Show's largest focus was on the cartoon, which ran for about 15 minutes per episode, and the remaining half hour would be split between commercials and the sitcom. Half of the sitcom would play before the cartoon, and the remainder after. Perhaps what the show is most remembered for is its theme song, which blended the cartoon world with the real-life Mario and Luigi actors, all to the tune of the irrefutably catchy Mario Brothers rap, which was actually sung by Albano and Wells. It's a perfect time capsule of late 80s and early 90s rap for kids. We're the Mario Brothers, and plumbing's our game. We're not like the others who get all the fame. If your sink is in trouble, you can call us on the double. We're faster than the others, you'll be hooked on the plumbers, are just a few lines that still hold up. And one of the most underrated inclusions of the entire series is the remixing of the classic game themes. In this intro alone, we get the World 1 Level 1 theme, but it's given a hip-hop beat with a number of sound effects from the games, like when they grow from touching a mushroom. The theme song is sung over the two actors dancing and interacting with the animated world around them, and running in the background of a Mario level come to life. It was a marriage between the real world and cartoon that kids hadn't been this excited for since Who Framed Roger Rabbit. Only this time, it was with the biggest stars in video games. But that's where the crossover between the two versions of the Mario Brothers would end, and we would be introduced to the, at the time, official Mario Brothers. Albano and Wells are a sight to behold as Mario and Luigi, sporting both the stunning mustaches and signature lettered hats their video game counterparts are known for. But their overalls are noticeably different, matching their respective hat colors with blue undershirts, rather than the traditional blue overalls and their undershirts matching their hats as we know today. And this might seem strange, but it actually does make sense contextually. At the time of filming, Super Mario Bros. And Super Mario Bros. 2 were the only mainline console games to come out in the US. Super Mario Bros. 3 was released in 1988 in Japan, but wouldn't make its way to the US until 1990. So the image of Mario in his red overalls and blue undershirt that was seen on the Super Mario Bros. 2 US box cover art was canon at that point, technically making it correct. One change which surprisingly wasn't very distracting was the absence of their white gloves. Instead, we got the addition of tool belts around their waist, which I always liked. They're plumbers, so it makes sense for them to have tools on hand. Looks can only go so far though, if the characters themselves aren't entertaining or feel true to who the Mario Brothers could be. What's funniest about the actors is that they're both around 50 years old, but don't feel like it due to their portrayals of the brothers as essentially big kids. Starting with Mario, he's the big palooka of the two. Played by Lou Albano, he's a hefty man, looking like his overalls are struggling to contain him. He's not overweight, but there's definitely a heft to him. He also looks to be in a constant sweat, like he's had heat blasting into his face from the pipes he's been working on, and his Jerry curl hair is so bristly and wild, his hat must be strapped on because it looks like it's always on the verge of falling off. Though he may appear manic, there's no denying he's an irresistibly lovable oaf. As Albano describes him, Mario is a great guy, like a guy off the street, the big slob that did everything wrong, but he was still Super Mario. And that's exactly how he comes off. He's the immature one, food obsessed and messy to boot. Only in age is he the older brother, as he lives by a jump first, ask questions later mentality, regularly putting himself in precarious positions, like accidentally lying on a slab and having his brain swapped with Frankenstein, or abusing a magic potion that makes a famous singer fall in love with him. Danny Wells takes on the role of the younger, but wiser brother Luigi. He's a bit more prim and cultured, but nowhere near impervious to being the butt of many of the happenings they encounter, and it's usually his slight arrogance or shorter temper with his brother that get him into trouble, like when he gets mad and uses a magic trick to make Mario disappear, only to realize he has no idea how to make him reappear. They both get equal opportunities to put their comedic chops to the test, splitting an even amount of puns and wordplay, but Luigi acts more often as a straight man, with Mario working as the comic relief, and their chemistry is undeniable. They appear as if they've been working together forever, with a warmth that goes just past being actors, that in some other far-off world, these two may actually exist as real brothers. My favorite aspect of the show is the full range of emotions they go through with each other. They poke fun, are sarcastic, exasperated, worried for the other's well-being, and their larger-than-life expressive personalities is what I always enjoyed most about the sitcom, especially since there still aren't many instances where the brothers show this many sides to themselves. In the games, they mostly wear permanent smiles. Certain official comics gave them a little more depth, but they still feel more like extensions of the games than original characters. Here, their dispositions are multifaceted enough where they feel like they could exist as their own entities, independent from the Mario brand. And at times, they get so snippy towards one another, you wonder if they would still get along if they weren't related. But their unswaying love for each other is the true heart of their relationship and the show. And at the end of the day, no matter what the situation, they always end up in a warm, brotherly embrace. As a fun bonus, whenever one of the two does any sort of movement, one of the sounds from the games plays to enunciate their physicality. It's one of the few ways the show connects to the games. Hearing a block being broken or a turtle being jumped on are familiar noises when they make subtle shifts such as pointing or shrugging their shoulders. It makes you feel as if these characters step directly out of the game. One of the most unique aspects of the show is that since most of the budget went to the cartoon, the sitcom took place in one location, the Mario Brothers below street level apartment. Each episode begins the same, with a static shot of a picture of the Brooklyn Bridge, before zooming in on the Mario Brothers plumbing window front. From there, all bets are off as to what each corner of the house will surprise you with next. From the window looking up towards the sidewalk, which shows cutout silhouettes of people's feet walking by, complete with the rods that puppet them totally visible, to the stairs embedded into the wall that wobble like gelatin when somebody walks down them. It's inclusions like these that help to build up the quirky world the pair inhabit. The fact that neither of them acknowledge this strangeness makes their eccentric surroundings still feel grounded in reality. When your home could comfortably fit in the same neighborhood as Pee-wee's Playhouse, that's quite the feat. Their front door leads to a wide open space. On one side we have pipes in the kitchen, and above the kitchen sink is their medicine cabinet, where they occasionally open it to commiserate with celebrity drop-ins, and a bathtub with crops growing out of it, guarded by a miniature scarecrow. To the other side, there's a furnace in a sewer opening, and in the center, a table with a red and white checkered tablecloth that looks like it was ripped out of a pizzeria. But the single best prop has to be the pizza phone. It's a rotary phone that sits on a large pizza and is likewise covered in said pizza. That's all there is to it. But if there's one piece of the Super Show that needs to exist as a piece of merchandise, I would buy that in a second. Pant-sized or to scale, I'd make room for it. If these creative choices all seem very unlike Nintendo, it's due to the company's hands-off approach with the project, and extends to the storylines as well. Not only did they let Deke handle the writing of the episodes, but the segments were basically all improvised. Albano and Wells would be given a basic plot for each episode, and the actors would make up their lines as they went along. To think that Nintendo, who carefully manicures every mustache hair and places every overall stitch with purpose, would allow for that to happen is unthinkable now. And Deke took full advantage of their lax attitude, concocting the silliest plots centered around the brothers, with the comedy coming from their reactions to the most unexpected events that show up on their doorstep, such as a little girl claiming to be an orphan who cons them into throwing her a fancy birthday party, or when the brothers strike oil in their bathtub and sell it to an oil baron, and the time Luigi gets hit on the head and wakes up believing he's a game show host. The show is situation heavy, but that doesn't mean there aren't a number of good lines sprinkled into every episode. A few of my favorites being when Mario sees Luigi acting funny, and Mario says, "So you finally went cuckoo," and the bird in their cuckoo clock angrily springs out and yells, "Leave me out of this." Or possibly my favorite line, when Mario and Luigi are trying to pry open a casket, and Luigi says, "Mario, I've got to tell you the truth. I hate these childproof boxes." That's either the quickest or darkest throwaway joke I've ever heard. Either way, it's great. No discussion of the sitcom can be complete without mentioning the parade of celebrity talent from across the entertainment world to grace the brothers' doorstep. Magic Johnson, Vanna White, Elvira, Rowdy Roddy Piper. It's an imposing list. But to me, the most entertaining cameos were from actors impersonating celebrities. There's no reason there needs to be an actress playing Cher. That part does not need to be written as the singer. But that they did it is what makes it so fun. And that most of the celebrities and their impersonators are not the most skilled actors. It's more like an elaborate game of dress-up, but in the most endearing way possible. If I had to compare these live-action segments to something, I would say they're closest to 60s era sitcoms. Imagine the goofiest parts from the original Addams Family or Bewitched, and that should give you a pretty solid idea of what to expect. By today, they may be considered hokey. Actually, by any era, they may be considered hokey. But everything is done with such earnestness and positivity, the show always ends with the characters smiling, and so too does the audience. Since the episodes only lasted a few minutes, there aren't too many fixes the show needs. Still, calling this a perfect sitcom would be untruthful, as if there's one facet that could have been improved upon, it would be the show's writing. As stated previously, there wasn't a concerted effort into developing full-bodied scripts for the live-action segments, and based on the creativity from Albano and Wells, there are an abundance of funny lines to be had. That said, there are moments when the writing is exceptionally weak. There are times when the entire episodes are made up exclusively of puns and canned responses, and feel more like things to say to fill runtime rather than creative endeavors. I understand there are a lot of episodes to create and not the most time or manpower dedicated for that specific section, but it's never nice to feel like any part of a show is a wasted opportunity, especially with how short they are. A majority of these episodes don't fall into this category, but stronger writing across the board would have benefited these segments greatly. Although there are a few episodes that don't reach their full potential due to the writing or time constraints, there are a lot of excellent Mario Bros. Live action segments. The live action segments do have different titles than the cartoon episodes, so I'm going to give the episode number and the live action episode name rather than the cartoon's episode name. Episode 1, Neatness Counts. The inaugural episode, celebrity guest Nicole Eggert comes to have her sink fixed before she leaves for a party. But while giving her a demonstration of their technique, they get her dirty, and in an effort to clean her up, get her even dirtier. It's the simplest episode, but is the purest display of the brothers' good-heartedness. While the series would get wackier, their honorable intentions and fun-loving personas would shine through and lay a blueprint on how they would go interacting with guests down the line. Episode 44, No Way to Treat a Queenie. The Mario brothers are visited by the Queen of England. Tired of living as a royal, she wants to spend her day pretending to be a commoner. The way these two act around the Queen, Mario treating her as an ordinary person, and Luigi trying to exhibit class, it's really funny and has a great ending. Now on Fridays, the Super Mario Bros. Super Show, instead of running the Mario cartoon, would have a Legend of Zelda cartoon. So this is the Legend of Zelda cartoon, Episode 1, Slime Busters. Luigi gets possessed by a ghost, leading Mario to call Ernie Hudson, a slime buster, to help him exorcise the spirit from his brother. This is by far the coolest episode. Having Mario cross over with a Ghostbuster fits surprisingly seamlessly. No doubt helped that Ernie Hudson is the best actor of all the guests. Like all the other segments, its runtime is short, but it far and away feels like the most complete story. The Super Mario Bros. Super Show's run was brief, only airing from September to December of 1989, and that could be seen as a failure at first glance. But when looking into the details of why it was cancelled, the truth is actually astounding. With the property of Super Mario Bros.' caliber, it would make sense to put a substantial amount of advertising budget behind it to make sure kids were aware and would watch it. But by all accounts, Nintendo didn't advertise the show at all. Yet with no promotion, the show quickly ascended to the #1 cartoon in its time slot. So with this show that cost no money to advertise and was hugely popular, why was production of it stopped? According to Danny Wells, the show didn't last because the show didn't mean anything to Nintendo. After the first run, Nintendo said, pull the plug. They didn't care if we were #1. It didn't mean anything because we were chump change to them. The show was cancelled not because the numbers weren't good, we were #1. Just Nintendo said, okay, we're done, thank you. That was the end of it. Lou and I looked at each other, we couldn't believe it. We just couldn't believe it. The cancellation of the show as a whole wouldn't mean the immediate end of Nintendo's foray into television, though. From September through November of that same year, they aired King Koopa's Cool Cartoons, where an actor dressed in a rubber King Koopa suit would host a show in front of a live studio audience of children. After that show's cancellation, 1990 saw the cartoons replayed, but instead of the sitcom as the companion piece, it was replaced by Club Mario, which starred two extreme 90s teens that performed high-energy sketches together. With that show cancelled, Nintendo released the show The Adventures of Super Mario Bros. 3 in 1990, and a year later, the cartoon Super Mario World to coincide with that game's debut. While Albano and Wells never returned to the franchise in any capacity, their contributions to the Mario Bros. World are still felt today in ways people may not realize. This show was the first time the Mario Brothers' shared last name Mario was introduced, as was their origin story of coming from Brooklyn. And these histories made their ways into both the 1993 and 2023 movies. And even the Mario Brothers rap got a scene in the animated film. Formally, the Super Mario Bros. Sitcom will remain as a footnote in the history of Mario, and I don't see Nintendo ever putting out another product so haphazardly again. But because they allowed themselves to take a risk with their property, it gave us the most three-dimensional version of the characters we've ever seen, and more than likely, ever will see. But who knows? Maybe someday, Nintendo will go back into the vault and acknowledge another reference to that past. And if they do, I'll be ready to swing my arms side to side and do the Mario.